MZTV.
Would you like to know what happened concerning the man who wrote me yesterday, to whom I administered tough love? Well, I can't give you specifics right now because I don't know them, but I just saw 5 minutes ago that he sent a contribution to this work. That tells me a lot. If I have more to share with you later on that, I will do so. This is Martin Zender. Welcome to MZTV. You want a letter? I got a letter. On August 7th, 2016, my friend Dave Ward, been a friend for a while, sweet guy, and his lovely wife Diana, he sent me an alarming letter on August 7th, 2016. I was living in the good old laundry room. I'm going to read that letter to you because I have Dave's permission, and obviously he's given me permission to use his name. He is mortified by the letter today, and I answered him, by the way. And I'm going to read my answer to him, too, because after yesterday's show, Dave texted me, and he said, yep, there's your tough love again, Martin, coming through, doing good. And he said, I'll never forget the tough love you dished up to me in August of 2016. And I had forgotten about it, and he's brought it up several times. How could I forget about it, really? He's brought it up several times that it saved him. I mean, he was already saved. It saved him in the sense that he was being seduced by human philosophy. And it was real, and it was scary. And when I see that happening, to me, it's a 911 call. So let me read that letter to you and my response, and then his response back to me. Martin, for the first time in a long time, I'm finding myself with no joy. I just need to share with someone. First off, it has nothing to do with my relationship with Diane. I might have called her Diana earlier. My apologies, Diane. We have had some very good times, and we fall in love with each other on a daily basis. I couldn't have been blessed more with a woman. She is gone for 3 weeks to Chicago, as her daughter recently had twin boys that spent 2 months in NICU as they were premature and had some difficulty surviving at first. They are fine and were sent home 2 weeks ago. Her daughter called and asked if her mom could go help her, and I, of course, told her to go. Honestly, it is best that she not be here right now, as I am completely depressed and I've lost my joy. I hope you don't mind me sharing. I monitor Facebook a bit and have been friends with James Baskin, as I heard him on a couple seminars in the past. James has been sharing scripture out of what is called the Paleo Scriptures, coming from writings off the Dead Sea Scrolls. It has been good to see more original writings that seem to speak more in terms of God's relationship with his people. I contacted James and asked him if he had a source that I could read more. He did that, and also attached a hyperlink to a YouTube video that he asked me to listen to and give him my thoughts. The gentleman who spoke talked of how he had gone back to the original scriptures to get a more authentic understanding of what was being said. I was fascinated by what he was saying, but then he got into the subject that God's name and his son's name had been given different placeholders by those who translated them. He talked of the fact that the names have been replaced by pagan names of satanic gods. He said there were more than 30,000 discrepancies in the different scriptures that had been translated from different sources, and we basically have copies of copies of copies. He went on to explain that only the Torah provided the original thoughts of God, and that he, being supreme, is in the future. And prophecies are his observance as to what is going to happen. He then talked of free will and deciding to go back to the Torah and become one of God's family members by observing the Torah. He also went into the fact that there is only one evangel, and that is of the Torah, and that Paul's evangel is not a true gospel, and that he is basically a heretic who is leading people astray. Paul is. He talked of getting away from the churches and the Babylonian government that we have and not supporting it at all. He talked about circumcising your children so that you could show God you wanted to be part of his family. It got kind of heavy and very confusing. I shared with James my confusion. He told me he had gone through the same confusion a year ago and had come to terms with it. I mentioned that the gentleman seemed to think Paul was off base. And wasn't that what the Jewish Christians were saying back in Paul's time and were constantly trying to kill him? James went on to say he's been studying all of this and now feels that Paul is in violation of God's purposes and is lying about what he said he was told. He talked of how over half the Bible, which the gentleman said Bible is the name for another pagan goddess, was taken out, and one man made sure that only lies were kept in the books. I shared with James that at that time my joy was gone. Did he mean that God was not going to call anyone into his family except for those following the Torah? I again feared for my family and friends, and that after I knew of this evangel, I fell more in love with God. He wrote back that he felt this new way was true, and that those who did not go the way of the Torah and God's original plan would cease to exist. This is where I lost it. Martin, I have been going around in a haze all day long and have spent my last hours in tears. James has been studying this, and I am now afraid to follow through and see what he's seen. I'm afraid of a God who does not have a plan for me or my family. If it's true, I'm never going to see my mother and father and children and grandchildren again. The joy I had in believing that God was going to reconcile all, and that in time we would be together in relationship made me look forward to the future. Years ago, when I was going through my divorce, I lost contact with my children for almost 2 years based on lies their mother told them. I lived within 3 miles of each of them and could not see them. I actually ended up in the hospital on suicide watch for 2 weeks, and I went back later for another week to keep from getting into depression at home. When we did get back together, they made it very hard to have a decent relationship, as much as I tried. I finally called out to God and asked him what was wrong. Why didn't they see how much I loved and cared for them? I felt him answer back, quote, "You are going to have all eternity to have a good relationship with them. Just love them where they are right now." Martin, I took that as the most calming message I ever got from God. Now I'm wondering if, since I said it out loud, I was answered by a demon. I have been crying out to God for an answer to this. Am I wrong? Have we all been fooled? James is someone I valued as a friend and trusted because of his past talks on God's reconciliation. And now he has reversed his position to annihilation of the majority of those ever existing because they, quote, free willingly, unquote, didn't come to God or never got the chance. And then it's only the Torah way. Honestly, I am mad at God over this. I have told him that if that's the way it really is, then I, quote, choose to be annihilated. And soon, I'm even having thoughts of suicide as I just can't stand the thought of this being true. I don't want to face weeks, months, or years of life watching my family, friends, and even enemies just marching towards being totally destroyed, that God doesn't have the desire to reconcile. I have spent years trying to understand God's purpose and plan for my life, and have had a peace like I never thought I could have. At this point, it seems like all the supports in my belief system have been totally kicked out from under me. I have no peace, no joy, no desire to go on. I'm afraid to continue studying the Paleo scriptures, or even the scriptures I have, if they are so corrupt. I know you can't do a thing for me, but I needed to vent to someone I can trust. I'm hurting like I've never hurt before. All I ask is that you please pray for me, that I will find answers from the God I thought I knew. From Dave. My response. Dear Dave, you don't need my prayers. You need me shaking you by the shoulders. Have you truly lost your mind? Honestly, I will try to answer this patiently, but it will be difficult. I thought that you were rooted and grounded in the truth, but now your faith in God is being shaken by a lunatic who is telling you that you have to be circumcised and that the God of the Bible is not the true God and that Paul is a liar. Do you believe any lunatic who comes down the pike? If someone came along and told you that Santa Claus was real and that he lived at the North Pole, would you believe him? I cannot even imagine how you have indulged Jim's bullshit by asking him serious questions. I'm shocked that you indulged him for even a moment. I'm shocked that you would give Baskin even a second of your time when you heard how insane and insidious his, quote, new discovery is. Paul said of the circumcisionists, quote, we did not put up with them for a second, unquote. Yet, apparently, you are willing to have long conversations with an apostate and an unbeliever and to carefully consider his teaching. No wonder you've lost your peace. You're getting mad at the wrong person, Dave. Don't be mad at God. He hasn't moved. He hasn't changed. First, be mad at Jim Baskin for never being a believer in the first place, and yet standing in front of a podium in Pennsylvania and pretending that he was one. That's the guy you need to be mad at. And then give yourself a swift kick in the pants for not yet being rooted and grounded in the truth. But this is a wake-up call for you, and I'm happy about it because now you know why Paul would not countenance this stuff for a moment. It's poison. Jim Baskin's teaching is poison. It's philosophy. And yet you gladly step up to the fountain and take a drink. And then you hang around for more. You ought to have slammed the door in the face of Baskin as soon as you detected the madness, the faithlessness, the untruth. Baskin is blown about by every wind of teaching, as the Apostle Paul says. The opposite of this is being rooted and grounded in the truth. Colossians 2, verses 8 and 9. Beware that no one shall be despoiling you through philosophy and empty seduction, in accord with human tradition, in accord with the elements of the world, and not in accord with Christ. For in him the entire complement of the deity is dwelling bodily. Dave, you have done the very thing that Paul has warned against. You have allowed yourself to be despoiled of all your treasures in Christ by drinking from the poison fountain of philosophy. Now you see what a seduction it is. It tastes like Kool-Aid, and it comes from your friend. What a ploy of Satan. But you've been delivered from it. I am glad that you wrote me, because I will not watch this kind of thing and tolerate it. I believe that this event is serving to root and ground you in the truth, unshakable. You are not yet unshakable. Any idiot can apparently come along, especially if it's a friend, and talk you out of your God and your Christ. But no more. This is the last time it will happen, Dave. This is exactly why God did not want the Israelites visiting the other nations. The Israelites were so malleable and so movable and so shakable and so able to be influenced that they would go for the false gods of the nations in a second. You have gone for the false god of James Baskin in a second. But this has been a valuable lesson because now you are out of the clutches of the false god. The false god took away your peace. But now you are restored. You cannot tolerate this bullshit for a second. You do not owe it a fair hearing. I don't care how much of a friend James Baskin is and how much you respect him in other areas. You do not owe him a hearing. You have apparently not yet been rooted and grounded in the truth, but I am confident that this is one giant step closer for you to this wonderful state of being unshakable. Maybe you are now all the way there. Good then. I am glad for this experience. Ephesians 2:16-19, that he may be giving you, in accord with the riches of his glory, to be made staunch with power through his Spirit in the man within, Christ to dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, having been rooted and grounded in love, should be strong to grasp together with all the saints what is the breadth and the length and the depth and the height, to know the love of Christ as well, which transcends knowledge, that you may be completed for the entire complement of God. I am your friend, and your brother, which is why I speak to you this way. Baskin has turned to idols from the living God. Let him go his way. As for you, your way is the way of truth. Paul is your apostle, commissioned by the glorified Jesus Christ. Your peace has been taken away, not by God, but by a false god, come through the voice of a friend. Ephesians 6, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and world mights of wickedness among the celestials. Satan wants you destroyed, and he is using James Baskin to do it. This is what Satan does. He uses those closest to us. But I am persuaded of better things concerning you. I remain your brother and faithful servant by the grace of God, Martin Zender.